Welcome to Poetry on Form, and today we're going to be looking at the ballad form. Now this is a popular narrative song originally. It was a song before it became a poem, and it was probably originally one to dance to. It was passed down the generations orally, so via the folk tradition. So they were very rarely, at the beginning, they were very rarely written down. So they were passed on from person to person. It was usually anonymous. Generally a story, a narrative with a very strong central character. It could be tragic, comic, very often romantic. But later on, the songs began to be written down around about the 17th century on what's called broadsides, which were one sheet of printed paper. So they were printed often with lurid pictures, and then they were sold, and they were incredibly popular. So that's how the ballad form was disseminated from the 17th century onward in the form of a broadside. And then in the 18th and the 19th century, a literary form of the ballad began to emerge, and there were some famous ones including La Belle Dame sans Merci by Keats, the Ballad of Reading Gaol by Oscar Wilde. So what's the form of the ballad? It's usually in verses of 4 lines each, so that's called a quatrain. So you have the quatrains, and the rhyme scheme is usually A, B, C, B. And the first and the third line is what's known as an iambic tetrameter, I'll say that correctly, which is 4 iambs. Now, if you remember back to our talk about iambic pentameter, an iamb is 2 syllables with a short and a long stress, so it's da-da. So there will be 4 of those in the line, and then the second and fourth line is an iambic trimester, which are 3 of those iambs, da-da, da-da, da-da. So that's the strict form, but since it is a folk tradition and quite casual in some respects, lots of ballads play around with this and stretch out lines for dramatic effect or change the rhyme scheme if accompanied by music. So I'm going to read a few. First of all, I'll start out with the Ballad of Barbara Allen, which is anonymous and is in the tradition, the early tradition. I'm not going to read it all because it's got over 20 verses. So I'll read the first couple of verses and the last couple so you get a sense of the story. Barbara Allen. In Scarlet town where I was born, there was a fair maid dwelling, made every youth cry, well away, her name was Barbara Allen. All in the merry month of May, when green birds they were swelling, young Jemmy Grove on his deathbed lay, for love of Barbara Allen. I'll switch to the end. Oh, mother, mother, make my bed, oh, make it soft and narrow, my love has died for me today, I'll die for him tomorrow. Farewell, she said, ye virgins all, and shun the fault I fell in, henceforth take warning by the fall of cruel Barbara Allen. So that's an anonymous poem, and there's a long, strong storyline in that with a bit of a warning at the end as well. So John Keats in 1819 published La Belle Dame sans Merci, which is also in ballad form, but as you can hear from the fourth line in each verse, slightly different rhythm there going on for effect. So I'll read 3 verses of that so you can hear the difference. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woebegone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairest child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. So you can see that he has played about with the meter in the last line of each verse, and the subject matter is very romantic of the time, and you can see he's using the ballad form in a slightly more literary sense there. Another famous ballad is the Ballad of Reading Gaol by Oscar Wilde, which he wrote in 1897 after his release from Reading Gaol, where he was imprisoned for 2 years with hard labour. So that was an excruciating and life-changing and potentially fatal time for him. So I'll read just a few of the stanzas from that because that also is a very long narrative poem. These are the famous ones. It starts at stanza 7. Yet each man kills the thing he loves. By each let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword. Some kill their love when they are young, and some when they are old. Some strangle with the hands of lust, some with the hands of gold. The kindest use a knife because the dead so soon grow cold. Some love too little, some too long. Some sell and others buy. Some do the deed with many tears, and some without a sigh. For each man kills the thing he loves, yet each man does not die. He does not die a death of shame on a day of dark disgrace, nor have a noose about his neck, nor a cloth upon his face, nor drop feet foremost through the floor into an empty place. That was based on his witnessing of a hanging in the jail, and you can see that very clearly in the poem. And finally, quite an amusing one. This is also anonymous, and it's quite a funny ballad, and it's actually takes the form very seriously. It's quite a strict ballad form, so you can hear it, the A B C B verse, and the rhythm as well. It's called Getting Information Out of Pa. My pa, he didn't go to town last evening after tea, but got a book and settled down as comfy as could be. I'll tell you, I was awful glad to have my pa about, to answer all the things I had been trying to find out. So I asked him why the world is round instead of square, and why the piggies' tails are curled, and why don't fish breathe air, and why the moon don't hit a star, and why the dark is black, and just how many birds there are, and will the wind come back? And why does water stay in wells? And why do June bugs hum? And what's the roar I hear in shells? And when will Christmas come? And why the grass is always green instead of sometimes blue? And why a bean will grow a bean and not an apple too? And why a horse can't learn to moo? And why a cow can't neigh? And do the fairies live on dew? And what makes hair go grey? And then my pa got up and, gee, the awful words he said! I hadn't done a thing, but he just sent me off to bed. So we end with a charming poem there, which represents part of the tradition of the ballad, and I hope you enjoyed the ballad form today. Thank you.